you tell me your name, company, and your role within that company?
Okay, my name is Lia Newcomb. I work for Fujitsu and I am the Sustainability Engagement Team Manager for the NWE region. I am also the Responsible Business Environmental Pillar Lead for NWE also. Thank you.
Can you tell me a little about Fujitsu's climate and energy vision?
Okay, so Fujitsu Climate and Energy Vision is Fujitsu's medium to long-term plan to reduce carbon emissions progressively to become emission-free by 2050. At present, we are looking at targets that are looking at a reduction of 33% by 2030. And then, all the way down to zero by 2050. And obviously we will do that through a range of measures, innovation within our own organisation, energy consumption, renewable energy, etc. as well. So there is a plan and our vision was based on science-based targets, and those particular targets were actually approved in 2017, and at present I'm delighted to say we're making great roads in achieving those as well. It's very important.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you for that. It's a good vision to have. Can you tell me about your focus within that overall vision?
Well, in terms of our operations and how we run as a business, sustainability is front and center of everything we do. And, it goes from the creation of our products to the development of AI, IoT, all of those things. And, as an organization, it's something that's embedded. We are a driven, organization. And we work via the Fujitsu way that was created 85 years ago. Our very first corporate practice all those years ago was actually, in all our actions, we protect the environment and we contribute to society. And that's something that has gone all the way through. It's embedded in the way that we work every day of the week. So it's always there in the background, and it really focuses us on, trying to make these changes that are so desperately needed within the environment that we work and the communities that we serve as well.
Okay, and I think you've done some interesting work around carbon footprint analysis for IT estates and a benchmarking index. That sounded like quite interesting stuff.
Yeah, we're very, very proud of both of those tools, that we have developed within Fujitsu. So just to talk a bit about the carbon footprinting and analysis tool, the aim of this, it's to help our customers to, assess their IT estates, to, audit those and to work out what they're using and to work out their carbon footprint. And it is very much focused on ICT estates. Lots of clients have mixed estates. Some are looking to refresh, and, with that comes that ability to make recommendations as well. And then moving on from that, we also have the ICT sustainability benchmarking tool as well. And that's slightly different because what that allows us to do is help our clients to, gauge their, and assess their current sustainability processes. And then we're able to provide those processes with a maturity rating against maybe over 3,500 other organizations, and provide that maturity and then the recommendations to help them reduce their carbon emissions. And, it's, with what we do, it's the largest data set of its kind worldwide. So again, that's something that we've developed, we're very proud of. And if there's anything that we can do to help our clients reduce their carbon emissions and help them on their sustainability journey, that's very important as an organisation to us, that we're able to provide those services as well.
Yes, that sounds like a huge and very useful and impressive data set you've got there.
Yes.
I'm sure there's lots of examples that you've come across of how carbon emissions have been reduced by various various application of technology. Can you give me a specific example, a good example of how sustainability has been enabled by new technology?
I think if we look at our own operations, obviously we are an ICT company, and there are studies around the world that have assessed the the carbon emissions of the ICT industry as a whole, so from our device use and everything else, to around 2% of the world's carbon emissions, which is it's very, very high. And so when we are as an organization looking at things like our data centers and how the mechanical and electrical components within those contribute to that, but also the technology that we use within those data centers to kind of assess and monitor the cooling, the control measures, and to make everything more efficient and effective. Trending, being able to trend the cooling output of certain units, etc. as well. So we use technology within the data centers to help us do that, so that everything's as efficient as it possibly can be. As obviously with with what we're talking about today, and IoT and AI and all of these other, there are huge pressures on data centers. So in terms of the energy we use to power them and everything else as well, it's so important that they are as efficient as they possibly can be, to keep trying to get those carbon emissions down.
Yes, and particularly given the current trends of moving more and more processing to the cloud, more
Absolutely.
and more reliance on data centers. Can you give an indication of the impact that's been had on data center power consumption, and does that impact manifest itself differently in different regions around the world, in different places?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, actually, because if you look at data centers, it's where they're located and how they're powered. So, for example, and again, it's a reflection on where sustainability is on a world level as well, and what's accessible to people in different countries. Country level, people are on a lot, they're on different journeys, and if you look at the carbon emissions and the types of fuel that you are using to create the energy that goes into the data centers, for example, in the UK, well, in Fujitsu in the UK, for example, 100% of our electricity use is all by renewable sources. But then when we look to other countries that are just not there yet, they still may be using a higher proportion of fossil fuels to create their energies, and then that obviously increases carbon emissions as well. So I think we can't just look at this in isolation at the countries that are doing really well here, and we have to support other countries and regions that aren't just quite there yet, because it's all about how the energy is produced, that to run data centers, etc. anyway, and hopefully in the future we will have the infrastructure in place and the capability of supporting other countries in having better renewable sources, should that be wind, solar, or whatever else. So that, I think that's really important as well. Renewable energy is very important.
It's interesting. So the impact of a data center to run it and the impact on efficiency that you can have on those data centers can have very different results depending on where you do it in the world and how the power is generated. It's very
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's spinning things up to a global perspective. What about the wider role of corporates in sustainability? Beyond just CO2 and electrical consumption and these basic considerations.
Yeah. Again, that's another really good question, actually. I suppose if you look at Fujitsu as an organization, we are very much focused, as I said previously, in relation to using ICT to make the world a better place, to help communities, the communities which we serve and those which we don't serve. And, you know, there are, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, there are issues all over the world that need help and support. And, you know, carbon emissions, it's a global problem, does require a global solution. And when I look at some of the examples of where Fujitsu is using technology to make some of those, you know, better or to improve them, one of the projects that we worked on was using biometric technology with RiceX to help the rice industry is a multi-billion-pound a year machine, as it were, you know, and it's one where there are lots of different countries, and some of those are developed, some of those are not developed, and with any massive kind of export such as rice, you know, it's not just the issues of, you know, making sure it's all there. You know, there are massive human rights issues. You know, you talk about bribery, you talk about corruption, you talk about all of those things, but through the RiceX program and the biometric technology that, you know, we've worked with in that space, that helps, you know, take a lot of that out of the equation, because everything's monitored, everything's audited, everything is streamlined, and it helps to reduce the risk, and those local communities that, you know, inevitably can suffer around the world in terms of their human rights, and all those other things that are quite, you know, negative. And again, just to try and make everything work a little bit better and create a better environment for the world, as opposed to just ourselves in the UK, for example. So yeah, there's lots of great things going on at the moment, and as I say, Fujitsu, we spend millions on research and development every year, and, you know, we work really hard to create things within the health service, education, you know, smart cities, all of that. There's always something going on, and it's always for that greater good. You know, we have responsibility to use our ICT capability and skill to make the world a better place, basically.
That's fantastic. So you're actually deploying technology there. I would not have seen previously the link between deploying new technology and enabling and improving human rights, but clearly there is a link there. If you think about these things and how they can be deployed and the impact.
Yeah, well, that's what sustainability is actually all about. Everything is interconnected. Everything, you know, is interlinked, and one thing will always lead into the other, and it will always, it's a cause and effect kind of scenario, that, you know, it is technology, but actually it's all of the other benefits that actually brings as well.
Great. Lia, it's been great to talk to you. It's been really interesting.
It's been lovely talking to you as well, Jim. Thank you very much for having me. It was great to be able to talk about this today.